criminal efforts to overturn the 2020 election. That's what former President Trump is now facing, along with 6 unnamed co-conspirators.
Trump's campaign alleges the charges are politically motivated, and some of his Republican rivals agree, but not all of them. CBN News Washington correspondent Abigail Robertson has the latest.
Special Counsel Jack Smith announced the indictment of Donald Trump on 4 federal charges related to his actions after the 2020 election. The indictment accuses Trump of advancing false claims of election fraud to remain in power.
Since the attack on our Capitol, the Department of Justice has remained committed to ensuring accountability for those criminally responsible for what happened that day. This case is brought consistent with that commitment.
The 4 counts include conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding, and conspiracy against rights.
In this case, my office will seek a speedy trial so that our evidence can be tested in court and judged by a jury of citizens.
The 45-page indictment accuses Trump of enlisting 6 unnamed co-conspirators to, quote, assist him in his criminal efforts to overturn the legitimate results of the 2020 presidential election by creating fraudulent slates of electors in 7 states. Prosecutors claim Trump knowingly repeated false claims of election fraud and made them appear legitimate, creating an intense atmosphere of mistrust and anger, culminating in the deadly riot at the Capitol on January 6th. In a statement, Trump's campaign claims this is nothing more than the latest corrupt chapter in the continued pathetic attempt by the Biden crime family and their weaponized Department of Justice to interfere with the 2024 presidential election.
We've never had a situation where a spirited debate about the Constitution has become a criminal case. What's going to happen when there's a Republican administration? Is there going to be an effort to criminalize speech by Democrats?
Trump's attorney John Lauer argues Trump's claims are protected under the constitutional right to free speech.
If we're going to have a situation where the Department of Justice is going to fact check politicians and indict politicians for political speech and whether or not they're factually accurate, then this country will shut down politically because it's a never-ending cycle of tit for tat. And that's the risk of injecting politics into the criminal justice system.
The indictment also includes notes from calls between former Vice President Mike Pence and Trump, showing the president wanted his VP to reject electoral votes on January 6th. Pence, who's now running against Trump, saying anyone who puts himself over the Constitution should never be president of the United States. In a post on X, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, Trump's strongest rival for the Republican nomination, said the indictment shows the power of federal government is being politicized, writing, "One of the reasons our country is in decline is the politicalization of the rule of law. No more excuses. I will end the weaponization of the federal government." Trump will return to D.C. Thursday for his arraignment at a federal courthouse. The judge assigned to Trump's case has handed out 2 of the longest prison sentences for Capitol rioters thus far. Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Well, CBN News chief political analyst David Brody joins us now. So, David, 3 of these counts are conspiracy counts, and I'm a lawyer, so I know that means they're alleging, well, you talked about it. So Trump's attorneys are now arguing all of this is protected under free speech. So what do you think this is going to do with voters? Which way do you think they're going to go? Are they going to buy into this was some grand conspiracy? Or do you think this is going to be, well, it's protected political speech?
Well, Gordon, legally, obviously, Trump will have issue after issue as it relates to all of the indictments piling up. Politically, this is a boon to him. I mean, let's be honest. The last time he was indicted, actually, the first time he was indicted, he raised $4 million a day in that first week. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. Look, I believe, Gordon, and I believe this very strongly from an analytical standpoint, what we've seen so far. The more indictments that President Trump gets, and there could be a couple of more coming, or at least one more in Georgia for sure, the more indictments that pile up, the closer Donald Trump is to becoming the next president of the United States. And this is the reason why. What the left gets wrong, what the media gets wrong, is that they think this is all about Trump. It's never been about Trump. What it's been about, Gordon, is a lack of faith in our public institutions, the federal government. And that goes back decades and decades. We saw a lot of the grumblings in the Tea Party, and now here's Donald Trump in 2023, excuse me. But you have faith, a lack of faith in public institutions like the government and the media. And because people have lost faith in those public institutions, they see Donald Trump as a victim here. That's the key word. He is a victim, according to many of these folks that support him. And it's not just Republicans. There are a lot of blue-collar independents, blue-collar soft Democrats that voted for him in 2016 that feel aggrieved, that feel frustrated, that don't trust the government, that don't trust the media. And every time they pile on to Donald Trump, they say, wait a minute, he's not the person doing anything wrong here. He is the victim. And I believe that's why Donald Trump will actually be much closer to the presidency after all of these indictments, and that's the left's worst scenario here, Gordon.
Well, I think you're onto something really important, and that is the tie all the way back to the Tea Party and their effort to mobilize in 2012. The IRS absolutely blocked it. That action on their part was absolutely illegal, but nobody paid a price for that. Lois Lerner is still pulling a government pension, and she took the Fifth Amendment in front of Congress over what she did, and she had regular meetings in the Obama White House. So, you do look at this and go, well, is there a double standard here? Well, is it being equally applied? All of that aside, I do think Jack Smith is an incredibly capable attorney. And I actually think he could obtain a conviction from a jury. He's the same lawyer that tried Governor Bob McDonnell, and he got a jury conviction. He got an affirmation from the Fourth Circuit. And then the Supreme Court weighed in and said, well, if this case holds, all politics shuts down. This is essentially what politicians do. They give favors to their supporters, and that's what this case is all about. And it was a 9-0 decision. Do you think we're going to see that kind of outcome here where you could actually get a jury conviction? It goes to the Supreme Court. That will be after the 2024 election. So how is this going to play out? Because it just seems to be the most unusual thing, in my view, in all of American history.
Well, you'll have a better legal sense of this than I will. I will just simply say that to prosecute this criminally is going to be very, very difficult. I mean, this is thought police stuff. I mean, if you read the indictment, well, I know you've read it. You've read it. I've read it. Look, it goes through this idea that Trump knew it was false. Really? So now we have mind reading in an indictment. Trump knew it was false. Actually, he didn't know it was false because he was getting all this advice saying it was false. That's what Jack Smith says in the indictment. But what he doesn't say in the indictment is he was getting a lot of other information saying it wasn't false. And Trump clearly decided to go with what he thought was true and not what everybody else, according to Jack Smith, was telling him. Now, look, you can disagree and say he's stubborn, he's ridiculous, he should never have done it. I get all of that. Is a criminal, though? Is a criminal. And remember the Electoral Count Act, which is what Donald Trump was basing a lot of this on, that Mike Pence had the ability to send this back to the state legislatures. It had never been tested before. Trump wanted to push the envelope. He wanted to test it. And so that's what part of this was about. We don't see that at all in the indictment, not to mention the fact that Congress, the Senate, actually changed the electoral count because they needed to clarify it. So that would go in Trump's favor, the fact that they had to indeed clarify the Electoral Count Act. So I can go on and on, but the point is that this is very dangerous to actually start to criminalize what someone is thinking and what someone is, in essence, trying to make his case to say he thought the election was unfair and stolen.
Well, there's a long history in criminal jurisprudence about doing exactly that. That's what conspiracy charge is all about. Not only did you think about it, but you talked about it. You may not have done it, but the fact that you talked about it is enough to get a conviction. And that's been happening a long time. So let's turn back to politics. Let's get off the law of this. Is Trump burning through a lot of cash just to pay legal bills?
Yeah, I mean, they've gone through $40 million so far this year alone, $60 million, actually, if you go back to 2021 since he left office. And If you look at Ron DeSantis's numbers, he's got triple the amount of money that Donald Trump has when it comes to the super PAC angle. And it gets a little complicated. There's all different PACs and all of that. Bottom line is, Trump is in a hurting mode right now in terms of finances. The good news for Trump is that he'll raise a lot of money off of this. He'll continue to raise money, and he's Donald Trump. He's got a Teflon quality to him. Money, indictments, X, Y, and Z doesn't seem to really affect him much. Why? Because he has this connection with the people, because he feels he's been aggrieved and the people agree. And I think right there is where it kind of begins and ends. And the left doesn't like it, but that's the reality.
All right. Well, let's look forward to a very active campaign season. This is going to get very interesting. If it hasn't been so interesting so far, this is going to be the most rough and tumble campaign I think we're ever going to see. At least I hope we'll ever see in American history.